Welcome to another edition of 7 in 7, where we will explore the 7 readings of this week's Torah portion in just about 7 minutes. Torah portion is called Parshat Pinchas. It's a continuation of last week's Torah portion. After Bilam, the prophet, unsuccessfully cursed the Jewish people and instead it turned into blessings, his final piece of advice to Balak, the king who had hired him, was to send Moabi and Midianite women to seduce the Jewish people and bring their idol worship with them. Pinchas is the son of Eleazar, the grandson of Aaron the high priest. When he sees a prestigious member of the tribe of Shimon behaving inappropriately with one of these women, he kills the both of them. This week's Torah portion tells us that God rewards Pinchas with the blessing and the merit to be a priest, something that he did not have till now. And God instructs Moses to destroy the community of Midianites on behalf of their having caused the Jewish people to have sinned. Eleazar the high priest is instructed to count the Jewish people. Commentaries point out that of all the nations who have tried to bother us, some have tried to kill us. While we're instructed not to become friendly with them, we're also instructed, the Torah tells us, that we should not destroy them or bother them. Whereas the nations who try to seduce us with various types of sins, we are instructed to destroy them. So it turns out that the damage that's done to the Jewish soul, in a way, is far worse than damage that's done to a Jewish body. The second reading tells us that the Jewish people were counted, and the total number was 601,730. The tribe of Levi is not counted. When you read the reading, the names that the Torah gives us, for example, the tribe of Reuven is counted first. Reuven's first two sons are Chanoch and Palu, but instead of the Torah telling us the family of Chanoch and the family of Palu, the Torah tells us the family of HaChanochi and the family of HaPaloi. And the Torah does this with every single one of the names and tribes and the families. It adds a Hey in the beginning and a Yud at the end. And the commentaries point out that although the Jewish people had somewhat of a checkered history, and many of the nations of the world were accusing the Jews of various types of sins, God is here testifying on their behalf by putting his name, the Hey and the Yud, which flipped, of course, Yud and Hey is God's name, to vouch for their upstanding behavior. And the lesson here is a powerful one, that regardless of the type of behaviors that we sometimes struggle with, we know that God can see us for who we really are. The third reading tells us that God instructs Moses to divide the land between all the people who were a part of the census, and the land is given to each tribe by lottery. The family of Levi, the tribe of Levi, is now counted. There's about 23,000 members that are counted. The daughters of Tzalafchad approach Moses asking for their father's portion in the land of Israel, since he passed away and he left no sons, and they argue that they should be the inheritors of that land. And Moses approaches God to ask God what to do about that. The commentaries point out that a close reading here suggests that actually the men who were part of the story of the spies and would die over the 40 years were the only ones who died, whereas the women would actually all be the ones to enter the land of Israel. And that's why the story of Tzalafchad and his daughters is here, to show us that the women loved the land of Israel. And our sages teach that in the merit of the women's righteousness, they were able to leave Egypt and they were able to enter Israel. And in the merit of the women's righteousness, we will also be able to get the final Mashiach. The fourth reading tells us that God agrees to Tzlafchad's daughters' requests, and they are granted their father's portion in the land of Israel. And God instructs Moses in the laws of inheritance. God tells Moses to climb up to the top of a mountain where he's going to see the land of Israel from the top, but he will not be able to enter it. Moses then asks that God appoint a worthy successor to take over Moses when he passes on. God tells Moses to appoint Joshua and to bring him in front of the people to formally make him the new leader once Moses will pass away. The language that Moses uses when he asks God to send a replacement is that he wants the person should be someone who can go out before the people and go in before the people to bring them in and bring them out. And it becomes clear that Moses' vision for a leader is not someone who helps people do what they want to do, but rather leads from the front. He helps them, guide them in the direction that he knows that they should be going, which is not always where they want to go. And that's really the quality of a leader, to help people reach their own greatest potential that they may not even realize themselves. The fifth reading, God instructs Moses on the laws of sacrifice, the 2 daily sacrifices, the additional sacrifices for Shabbat, and the additional sacrifices for Rosh Chodesh, the first day of the month. A close reading of the sacrifice wording, it's somewhat nuanced, but suggests that the daily sacrifice, although it's constant and it's always there, the Torah uses the word moed, which is a celebration. And perhaps the lesson here is that even things that are constant, even things that are always happening, we should also find a way to make those exciting and make those meaningful, to celebrate those, not just the additional sacrifices, the additional things in our life, but even the everyday should be celebrated. The sixth reading tells us the laws about sacrifices of Passover, Shavuot, Rosh Hashanah, and Yom Kippur. Rashi points out that the animals that were used for those sacrifices were bulls, which correspond to Abraham offering his angel guests bulls to eat. The ram corresponds and reminds us the story of Isaac being replaced by a ram on the altar. And sheep remind us that the story of Jacob being paid by his father-in-law Lavan in sheep. The lesson here, I think, is a powerful one that shows us that even the most seemingly insignificant piece of information, like the type of animal that was used, can offer us deep insight and powerful lessons into the Torah. And so the next time you study any section of Torah and you come across anything, whether you think it's significant or insignificant, remember that it surely holds powerful lessons and powerful ideas. The seventh and final reading tells us about the sacrifices of Sukkot and Shmini Atzeret. If you read the numbers of sacrifices, you'll notice that it's brought in declining order. So the first day of Sukkot is 13 sacrifices, the second 12, the third there was 11, until we reached the seventh and final day of Sukkot, and there were 7 animals brought. And at Shmini Atzeret there was 1 brought. The commentaries point out that those numbers 13, 12, 11, 10 till 7 equal 70, which is supposed to represent the 70 nations of the world. Whereas the 1 sacrifice that's brought on Shmini Atzeret represents just the Jewish people. The idea of the declining number of sacrifices, that we pray to God that the negative influences that any nation or any person brings to us decline. Of course, we don't pray for their destruction. We just pray for their declining negative influence. So the next time somebody is doing something bad to you or somebody's bothering you, pray to God that their bad ideas go away rather than the person themselves go away. Wishing you a wonderful weekend, a Shabbat Shalom.